The notification on my phone screen said, "Motion detected," but I was 1,200 miles away in Miami. I opened the app expecting to see my cat. Instead, I saw my parents standing in my living room with a contractor, measuring the walls for my brother's new studio. They thought I was their silent financial safety net. But as I watched them plan to gut my house, I realized it was time to close their account permanently. My name is Destiny Schwartz, and at 34 years old, I have built a career on the ability to predict disaster before it makes the headlines. As a senior risk analyst and data security specialist for Novagate Analytics in Chicago, my days are spent dissecting variance, calculating exposure, and building digital fortresses around other people's money. I am paid a very comfortable salary to be the most paranoid person in the room. I see the cracks in the foundation that the architects ignore. I see the code vulnerabilities that the developers gloss over. I am currently sitting in a glass-walled conference room in downtown Miami, nodding politely as a client drones on about Q3 projections. But my mind is already 3 steps ahead, identifying the liquidity issues they are trying to hide in row 42 of their spreadsheet. I am good at this. I am precise. I am controlled. And then my phone vibrates against the mahogany table. It is a single, sharp buzz. I glance down, expecting an email from my boss or a calendar reminder for a flight. Instead, the notification is from my home security app. Motion detected. Living room. I frown slightly, a micro-expression that I quickly smooth over before the client notices. I live alone in a restored bungalow in a quiet neighborhood of Chicago. My cat, a rescue named Luna, is currently boarding at the vet because she requires medication for an ear infection. There should be no motion in my living room. Perhaps a shadow from a passing cloud, or maybe a large spider crawled across the lens. I slide my phone onto my lap, shielding it under the table, and tap the notification with my thumb. The app loads, the buffering wheel spinning for an agonizing second before the live feed snaps into focus. The breath leaves my lungs, not in a gasp, but in a silent, hollow evacuation. It is not a spider, it is not a cloud. Standing in the center of my pristine living room are my parents, Karen and Douglas. They are not alone. Standing with them is a man I do not recognize, a guy in a polo shirt holding a clipboard and a laser measuring tool. I stare at the small screen, my brain struggling to reconcile the data. I have not given them a key. Well, that is not entirely true. I gave them a key 5 years ago for emergencies. Fire, flood, blood. This does not look like an emergency. This looks like a leisurely Tuesday afternoon tour. My father is walking around touching my things, picking up a ceramic vase I brought back from Kyoto, while my mother stands with her arms crossed, gesturing expansively at the back of the house. I tap the microphone icon to enable the audio. The sound of the client's voice in the conference room fades into background white noise as the tinny audio from my living room fills my earbud. "The light in here is perfect," my mother is saying. Her voice is unmistakable, that specific pitch of authoritative delusion that has governed my entire life. She walks toward the sunroom, the glass-walled extension I built 2 years ago as my reading sanctuary. "We need to rip out these French doors. Obviously, open the whole space up." My hand tightens around the phone. Rip out? The man with the laser measure nods, shooting a red dot across the room. "If you take out the glass partition, you lose some thermal insulation, Mrs. Schwartz. But for a studio, you want depth." "Exactly," Karen says, nodding vigorously. "Jace needs space for the equipment. He is pivoting. The music thing was just a phase. But this podcast and stock trading livestream idea, this is the one. He is going to be the next big financial influencer." I feel a physical blow to my chest. Jace, my younger brother, the 31-year-old visionary who has never held a job for longer than 4 months, the man who thinks a credit score is just a suggestion. They are talking about turning my sanctuary, the home I paid for with 80-hour work weeks and skipped vacations, into a playground for his next failure. "We will put the green screen on that north wall," Douglas adds, pointing at my gallery wall of framed art prints. Destiny has too much clutter here anyway. We can box this stuff up and put it in the garage. The contractor scribbles something on his clipboard. He looks hesitant. And the homeowner? You said she is on board with this remodel? It is a pretty significant structural change to take out that sunroom wall. My mother laughs. It is a light, dismissive sound that I have heard 1,000 times. It is the sound of my boundaries being erased. Oh, don't worry about Destiny, Karen says, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. Destiny is gentle. She is a good girl. She won't make a fuss. She owes us her whole life, really. Without us pushing her, she would be nobody. She knows that. This house is practically ours anyway. The world stops. The conference room in Miami freezes. The client's mouth is moving, but I cannot hear him. She owes us her whole life. It is not the invasion of privacy that breaks me. It is not even the audacity of bringing a contractor into my home without asking. It is that sentence. It strips me bare. It reveals the fundamental architecture of our relationship. To them, I am not a person. I am not a daughter. I am an asset. I am a resource to be mined, a line of credit that never expires, a doormat that pays the mortgage. She won't make a fuss. I look at my mother's face on the screen, pixelated and small, yet looming larger than anything else in my universe. She looks so confident in her ownership of me. She believes my compliance is a permanent state of being, a law of nature like gravity. I do not scream. I do not jump up and flip the conference table. Something in my chest shifts. It is a mechanical click, like a heavy deadbolt sliding into place. The hurt, the stinging tears that wanted to form, they evaporate instantly, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. The part of my brain that analyzes risk for billion-dollar corporations wakes up and takes the wheel. If they view me as a financial instrument, then I will stop reacting like a daughter. I will start reacting like a portfolio manager dealing with a toxic asset. I mute the audio but leave the video feed running. I look up at the client, who is waiting for an answer to a question I did not hear. I apologize, I say, my voice steady, smooth, completely devoid of the tremor vibrating in my hands. I just received an urgent data flag from the home office regarding the security protocol we discussed. I need to address this immediately to ensure your assets are protected. The client looks impressed by my diligence. Of course, Destiny, we can take a 15-minute recess. I nod and open my laptop right there on the table. I do not check my email. I do not call the police. Not yet. Police are a blunt instrument, and this situation requires a scalpel. I navigate to my desktop and create a new folder. I name it Trap. Inside that folder, I create a spreadsheet. I name it the Ledger, Family Edition. My fingers fly across the keyboard. I am not crying. I am calculating. The emotional part of me, the little girl who just wanted her mother to be proud of her, is currently being locked away in a soundproof box in the back of my mind. The woman sitting at this table is the ruthless analyst who knows that the first rule of stopping a hemorrhage is to cut off the blood supply. I open a second tab and pull up the airline website. My return flight is scheduled for Thursday, 3 days from now. I was supposed to spend a few days decompressing on the beach. I cancel the ticket. I book a new seat on the red-eye flight leaving Miami tonight at 11:45. I will land in Chicago by 2:30 in the morning. I will not call them. I will not warn them. If I call now and scream, they will have time to spin the narrative. They will gaslight me. They will say I am overreacting, that they were just brainstorming, that I am being selfish. They will retreat and hide the evidence. No. I watch the screen again. Douglas is now using the laser measure to check the width of my custom oak bookshelves, undoubtedly calculating if they can be moved to make room for a ring light setup. They look so comfortable. They look like they own the place. I switch tabs to my banking portal. I do not move the money yet. That would trigger an alert on their end if they are monitoring the joint account I foolishly let them keep for emergencies. Instead, I prepare the transfer orders. I set up the freezing protocols for my credit cards. I draft the emails to my personal banker. I line up the dominoes so that with one click, I can bring the entire financial infrastructure of the Schwartz family grinding to a halt. Karen is laughing now, pointing at my sofa. I can imagine she is saying it is the wrong color for a live stream backdrop. Go ahead, I whisper, barely moving my lips. Measure the walls, plan the studio, get comfortable. I feel a strange sensation, a mix of adrenaline and ice water in my veins. For 34 years, I have been the safety net. I have been the one who fixes things, pays for things, smooths things over. I have been the good girl who doesn't make a fuss. That girl died the moment she heard her mother say she owes them her life. The new Destiny is not a safety net. She is a trapdoor. I check the time. It is 3:15 in the afternoon. I have 8 hours before my flight. 8 hours to build a case. 8 hours to compile every receipt, every loan, every temporary help transfer that turned permanent. I look at the camera feed one last time. They are still there, oblivious, smiling, planning how to cannibalize my success to feed their golden child's ego. They have no idea that the camera they are standing in front of is not just recording video. It is recording the opening statement of their trial. You want to play house, I think? My eyes narrowing as I watch my father kick his shoes off, in the middle of my living room. Fine, if you want to act, I will give you a stage so big you won't know how to get off it. I minimize the window, turn to the client who is walking back into the room, and flash a sharp professional smile. Thank you for waiting, I say. Now, let's talk about liability. The hum of the cabin pressure system is the only sound that cuts through the silence of the red-eye flight. Most of the passengers around me are asleep, heads lolling against window shades or buried under thin airline blankets, but I am wide awake. I paid $30 for the high-speed in-flight Wi-Fi, and it might be the best investment I have made in a decade. My laptop screen glows in the dim cabin, a singular beacon of cold, hard truth. I have opened the folder I created in the Miami conference room, and the spreadsheet, the ledger, Family Edition, is no longer blank. For the past 2 hours, I have been performing a forensic audit on my own life. I am not looking at this as a daughter anymore. I am looking at it as an auditor reviewing a company that is about to go bankrupt. I have 3 tabs open. My primary bank statements going back 7 years, my Venmo history, and a folder of archived emails labeled Family. It is nauseating how easy it is to track the flow of capital. It always moves in one direction, downstream, from me to them. I start typing, entering dates and amounts into the spreadsheet. The rows fill up with terrifying speed. Row 14, August, 4 years ago, $5,000. I remember this one vividly. Jace had called me at midnight, breathless with excitement. He had found a mentor, a guru in decentralized finance who was offering a masterclass in cryptocurrency trading. Jace swore this was it, the future of money, the key to the family's retirement. My parents had put me on speakerphone, my mother chiming in to say that Jace finally had a direction and that I, as the big sister working in finance, should support his initiative. I transferred the money. The result? Jace stopped watching the course videos after 4 days because the instructor was too technical and killed the vibe. That $5,000 did not buy an education. It bought 4 days of Jace pretending to be a wolf of Wall Street. Row 22, November, 3 years ago, $12,000. This was for the launch of J-Swag, his streetwear brand. He needed inventory. He needed a website. He needed to pay an influencer to wear a hoodie. I asked for a business plan, and my father accused me of trying to stifle my brother's creative spirit with my corporate red tape. So, I wrote the check to keep the peace. The brand existed for exactly 6 months, mostly as a series of Instagram posts where Jace looked moody in an alleyway. The boxes of unsold merchandise are likely still rotting in my parents' basement, or perhaps they have already been moved into my garage without my knowledge. Row 39, last spring, $18,000. The home music studio. This was the most painful one to type out. Jace had decided he was going to be a producer. He needed soundproofing, a top-tier mixing board, and Neumann microphones. My mother had cried on the phone, telling me that Jace was depressed, that he needed a win, and that if I didn't help him find his purpose, she didn't know what would happen to him, that $18,000 was a ransom payment for my mother's emotional stability. Jace used the studio for 3 weeks before deciding that the acoustics in the room were cursed and moved on to video games. I scrolled down to the bottom of the spreadsheet and let the formula sum the total. The number stares back at me, stark and unblinking. $137,000. I stare at the cursor blinking next to that six-figure sum. $137,000 drained from my accounts over the last 6 years. I close my eyes and lean my head back against the seat. The figure is staggering, but what hurts more is the realization of what that money actually represents. I used to tell myself I was helping. I told myself I was a good sister, a supportive daughter. That was a lie. That money was a fee. It was the subscription cost I paid to be tolerated by my own family. My mind drifts back to Indiana, to the small, siding-clad house where we grew up. The dynamic was established before I even knew how to do long division. Jace was the golden boy. He was 2 years younger, with bright eyes and a smile that could charm a snake. He was terrible at school, barely scraping by with passing grades. But my parents never scolded him. They called him an artist. They said the school system was too rigid for his expansive soul. And then there was me, Destiny. The girl who did her homework on Friday nights. The girl who got straight A's, not because she was a genius, but because she was terrified of failure. I was the independent one, the low-maintenance model. Destiny doesn't need us, my father would say to the neighbors, a beer in his hand. She is a machine. She runs on autopilot. He said it like a compliment, but it felt like an eviction notice, because I was capable, I was invisible, because Jace was chaotic. He was the center of the universe. I remember the summer I was 16. I wanted to go to a specialized math camp at the state university. It cost $400. My parents told me they couldn't afford it. That money was tight. 2 weeks later, they bought Jace a new dirt bike because he was going through a hard time after a girl dumped him. The dirt bike cost $1,200. When I pointed out the unfairness, the air in the house changed instantly. It wasn't just anger. It was a withdrawal of love so absolute it felt like the temperature dropped 20 degrees. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father spoke to me in monosyllables. That silence lasted for a month. I learned the lesson then, and I learned it well. The only way to be part of this family is to facilitate Jace. If you are not serving the golden child, you are attacking the family unit. In therapy, during the brief period, I allowed myself to go before work got too busy. The counselor used a term for this, the fawn response. It is a trauma response where you try to please your abuser to avoid conflict. I have spent my entire adult life fawning. I have been buying my way into their good graces, terrified that if I closed the wallet, I would lose the only family I have. I look back at the spreadsheet. I add a new column next to the dollar amounts. I name it the opportunity cost. Next to the $5,000 for the crypto course, I type down payment on a rental property in Logan Square. Next to the $12,000 for the hoodies, I type the master's degree in data science. I deferred twice. Next to the $18,000 for the studio, I type 3 weeks in Italy, a new car to replace my 10-year-old sedan, a savings cushion that would let me quit my job if I burned out. But the costs aren't just material. I think about the man I dated 3 years ago. Mark, he was kind, stable, and he loved me. But he couldn't understand why I was always canceling dates to rush home because Jace is in trouble, or why I couldn't move in with him because my parents might need me financially. Mark eventually left. He told me he couldn't be in a relationship with 3 people. I type Mark into the column. My fingers hover over the keys. I realize something that makes the air in the cabin feel thin. In all these years, in all those phone calls where they asked for thousands of dollars, never once did they ask me what I was saving for. They never asked if I wanted to buy a house. They never asked if I wanted to go back to school. They never asked if I was tired. They only asked how much I had available. To Karen and Douglas Schwartz, I am not a person with dreams. I am a liquidity event. I am a line of credit with a heartbeat. The anger that had been simmering in my gut since I saw the camera feed begins to cool. It solidifies into something harder, like molten steel tempering into a blade. It is a relief. Honestly, anger is hot and messy. This new feeling is cold and efficient. It is the feeling I get when I find a discrepancy in a ledger that proves embezzlement. I am done fawning. I am done paying the tax on my own existence. I click on the file name at the top of the screen. I highlight the ledger, Family Edition. I hit backspace. I type in the new name, the ledger, Exhibit A. It is no longer a family record. It is evidence. I do not know exactly what the courtroom will look like yet. Maybe it will be a literal court of law. Maybe it will be the court of public opinion when I expose their fraud. Maybe it will just be the final confrontation in my living room. But whatever the venue, I will be armed. I save the file and back it up to 3 different cloud servers. I close the laptop with a snap. The pilot announces that we are beginning our initial descent into Chicago. Outside the window, the city is a grid of amber lights, sprawling and complex. Somewhere down there, in the house that I bought, my brother is probably sleeping in my guest room, dreaming of his new podcast studio, thinking he has won the lottery. He has no idea that the Lottery Commission has just arrived to audit the ticket. I stare out at the dark horizon. The sadness is gone. The guilt is gone. All that is left is the plan. I am coming home, not to join the family, but to dismantle the business. The wheels of the plane touch down on the tarmac at O'Hare with a violent jolt, pulling me out of the cold headspace of my spreadsheet and back into physical reality. It was 2:45 in the morning. The cabin was dark, filled with the groggy sounds of passengers unbuckling seatbelts and retrieving carry-on bags. I switched my phone off airplane mode. Instantly, the device seized up. A cascade of notifications flooded the screen, buzzing incessantly against my palm. I expected angry texts from my mother asking why I hadn't liked the photos of the renovation yet. I expected missed calls from my father demanding to know when I was flying back. But the name flashing on my screen wasn't Karen or Douglas. It was Lina Ortiz. Missed call, Lina Ortiz, 9:15 p.m. Missed call, Lina Ortiz, 9:45 p.m. Missed call, Lina Ortiz, 10:30 p.m. Text message, Destiny, please call me. It is urgent. Text message. I think I made a mistake. Please pick up. I frowned. Lina was Jace's fiancée, a soft-spoken graphic designer who usually played the role of Switzerland in our family wars. She was the one who smoothed over awkward silences at Thanksgiving and reminded Jace to send thank you cards. She never called me late at night. She never sounded frantic. A cold prickle of intuition ran down my spine. If Lina was panicking, the situation on the ground was worse than I thought. I didn't call her back. I didn't want my voice to be overheard by the sleepy businessman sitting next to me. Instead, I typed a text message, my thumbs moving with precise, deliberate speed. I just landed. Do not tell anyone I am here, not even Jace, especially not Jace. Meet me in parking garage C, level 2, row H. Look for the silver sedan. If you want to get out of this mess, be there in 30 minutes. I hit send. 20 minutes later, I was dragging my suitcase through the damp, echoing concrete cavern of Garage C. The air smelled of exhaust fumes, stale cigarettes, and freezing rain. It was a stark contrast to the humidity of Miami. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered with a low, electric hum, casting long, erratic shadows against the gray walls. I spotted her immediately. Lina was standing next to a concrete pillar, clutching her coat tight around herself. She looked like a ghost. Usually, Lina was impeccable. Hairstyled, makeup perfect, clothes pressed. Tonight, she was wearing a wrinkled blouse tucked haphazardly into dress pants, and her eyes were rimmed with red. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in 3 days. When she saw me, she almost collapsed with relief. "Destiny," she breathed, rushing forward. She looked around nervously, as if expecting Jace to jump out from behind a parked SUV. "I didn't know if you would come. I thought you were still in Florida." "I came back early," I said, my voice low and steady. "I saw the camera feed. Lena, I saw them measuring my living room." Lena flinched. She reached into her oversized tote bag and pulled out a thick, battered manila envelope. Her hands were shaking so hard the papers inside rustled. "You need to see this," she whispered. "Before you go home, before you talk to them, I stole this from Jace's backpack while he was in the shower." I took the envelope. It felt heavy, heavy with secrets. I moved under the harsh light of a street lamp and opened it. The first document was a lease agreement for a vehicle, a Range Rover Sport. The monthly payment was $1,500. My eyes scanned down to the signature line. Lessee, Jace Schwartz, cosigner, Destiny Schwartz. I stared at the signature. It was a looping, clumsy scrawl that looked vaguely like mine, but the S in Schwartz was curled the wrong way. I had not signed this. I had never seen this document in my life. "He told me you approved it," Lena said, her voice cracking. "He drove it home 2 weeks ago. He said you wanted him to have a car that matched the family brand he was building. He said you co-signed it as a gift for his engagement." I flipped the page. "I have never signed for a car for him. My credit is frozen as of 4 hours ago, but this?" I checked the date. "This is from last month." "There is more," Lena said. She pointed to the next stack of papers. I pulled them out. They were credit card statements, platinum cards, travel rewards cards, high-interest retail cards, but the names on the accounts weren't mine. They were Karen Schwartz and Douglas Schwartz. I looked at the transaction history: $500 at a steakhouse, $2,000 at an electronics store, $300 at a liquor store. "Mom and Dad know about these?" I asked. Lena shook her head violently. "I don't think so. Look at the billing address." I squinted at the fine print. Unit 4B, 1200 Riverside Drive. That was Jace's apartment. "He opened cards in their names," Lena explained, tears finally spilling over her lashes. "He rerouted the mail to his place so they wouldn't see the bills. He told me that Mom and Dad gave him permission to use their credit to jumpstart the business, and that he was paying them back monthly. But last week, creditors started calling his phone looking for Douglas Schwartz. He ignored them. He told me it was a mix-up." I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a surge of pure, white-hot rage. Jace wasn't just leeching off me anymore. He was committing elder financial abuse. He was destroying our parents' financial future while they clapped for him in my living room. "Why are you showing me this now, Lena?" I asked, looking up from the papers. "You have known about this for weeks." "Because of this," she said. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. It was a printout of an email chain. I unfolded it. It was a correspondence between Jace and a commercial real estate broker, but the subject line read, "Residential Conversion, Business HQ." I read Jace's words. "My sister is moving out permanently to travel for work. I will be taking over the property at my address. We need to register the following LLCs to this address immediately to secure the business loans we discussed. The studio build-out starts Tuesday." I stopped reading. The air in the garage felt suddenly thin. "He isn't just building a studio," I said, my voice dead calm. "He is establishing residency. He wants to use my physical address as collateral for shell companies." "He told me you agreed to let him have the house." Lena sobbed. "He said you were tired of Chicago and were going to be a digital nomad. He said you wanted us to live there so the house wouldn't be empty. He made it sound like he was doing you a favor." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "But then I saw the emails. He is talking about creative financing. He is trying to take out loans against the equity of your home using forged power of attorney documents. He calls it leveraging family assets." I looked at the woman standing before me. For years, I had thought Lena was just like them. Another enabler. Another person captivated by Jace's charisma. But now I saw the truth. She was a victim too. She was just another prop in his stage play. "Did he use your name?" I asked. Lena nodded, looking at the ground. He tried to buy camera equipment, $10,000 worth. He used my social security number. The bank flagged it because I have a fraud alert from an identity theft incident years ago. When I confronted him, he cried. He said he was desperate. He said he did it for us, for our future children. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. I wanted to believe him. Destiny, I love him. Or I thought I did. But when I saw him measuring your walls on the live stream today, when I heard him tell your mom that the house was basically his, I realized he is a monster. He is going to ruin all of us. I closed the folder. The sound echoed in the empty garage like a gunshot. He is not going to ruin us, I said. He is going to ruin himself, and we are going to help him do it. I stepped closer to Lena. The harsh overhead light cast deep shadows on her face, making her look older, harder. I need you to listen to me very carefully, I said. You are not going to confront him tonight. You are not going to break up with him, not yet. I can't go back there, she whispered. I can't look at him. You have to, I said firmly, because right now, you are the only witness I have who has seen the inside of his operation. I need you to be my eyes until Saturday. Saturday? Saturday, I repeated. He wants to do a big reveal on his live stream, right? A housewarming party for his new creator mansion? Lena nodded. He invited everyone, his friends, some investors he is trying to woo. Good, I said. A cold, sharp smile touched my lips. Let them come. Let him set the stage. I reached out and took Lena's cold hand in mine. Saturday at 2 p.m. I want you to come to the house. Bring this folder. Bring everything you have found. Bring the emails, the bank notifications, the rejected loan applications in your name. What are you going to do? Lena asked, fear and hope warring in her eyes. I am going to give him exactly what he wants, I said. He wants an audience? I will give him one. He wants to talk about finances? We will talk about finances. I squeezed her hand. But if you do this, Lena, there is no going back. You have to be ready to burn it down. Are you ready? Lena took a deep breath. She looked at the Range Rover lease one last time, then up at me. The fear in her eyes began to recede, replaced by the same anger that was fueling me. He stole my credit score, she said, her voice hardening. He stole your house. He stole his parents' retirement. Yes, I said. I will be there, Lena said. 2 o'clock? Perfect. We stood there for a moment in the shadowy silence of the parking garage. 2 women who had been used as stepping stones by the same man. The alliance was formed not in blood, but in ink and red tape. Go home, I told her. Act normal. Tell him you were working late. Tell him you are so excited for Saturday. Lena nodded and turned to walk toward her car. She paused and looked back. Destiny? Be careful. He is desperate. He thinks this is his last chance to be someone. I know, I said, gripping the handle of my suitcase. That is exactly why the trap will work. I watched her drive away, her taillights fading into the gloom. Then I turned and walked toward my rental car. I had a lot of work to do before Saturday. I needed to secure the perimeter. I needed to update the locks. And I needed to prepare the final nail for the coffin Jace had so lovingly built for himself. I did not go home. Driving straight to the house would have been an emotional reaction, and I was done with emotions. I was operating on pure logic. I drove my rental car to a business hotel near the airport, checked into a room on the 4th floor, and turned the generic desk into a command center. It was 3:30 in the morning. My body was screaming for sleep, but my mind was wired with the electric hum of adrenaline. I connected my laptop to the hotel network via a VPN. The first order of business was evidence preservation. I accessed the cloud server for my home security system and downloaded every second of footage from the past 48 hours. I did not just save it to my hard drive. I uploaded copies to an encrypted remote server and a physical external drive. I time-stamped every clip, specifically the segment where my mother claimed I owed them my life and the segment where the contractor discussed removing the structural wall. Next came the legal firewall. I knew Marla King would be awake. Marla was a corporate litigator I had met through a risk assessment audit years ago. She was a shark in a silk blouse, the kind of lawyer who billed $600 an hour and was worth every penny. I sent her a secure message. Urgent, familial fraud and identity theft. Need a consultation at 7 a.m. Documents attached. I attached Exhibit A and the scans of the lease and credit card statements Lena had given me. By 4:15 in the morning, I was on the phone with the 24-hour fraud department of my mortgage lender. This was the most critical step. Lena had mentioned Jace wanted to use creative financing to pull equity out of my home. My name is Destiny Schwartz, I told the representative, keeping my voice flat and professional. I am the sole owner of the property at 4210 Maplewood Drive. I have reason to believe that a third party may attempt to access my home equity line or refinance the property using forged credentials. I want to place a hard freeze on the title. The representative asked for my security phrase. Blue Horizon, I said. I have placed a note on the file. Ms. Schwartz, the agent confirmed. No changes can be made without you physically present in a branch with 2 forms of government ID. Thank you, I said. If anyone calls claiming to be me, or claiming to have power of attorney, I want you to flag the interaction as a fraud attempt and notify me immediately. Understood. I hung up and moved to the next layer of my defense, the Homeowners Association. I usually despise the HOA with their petty rules about lawn height and trash can placement, but today, they were my weapon. I drafted an email to the board president, a woman named Janice, who had once fined me $50 for leaving holiday lights up until mid-January. Dear Janice, I am writing to self-report a potential violation at my residence this coming weekend. I have reason to believe that a commercial media production crew will be operating on the premises without a permit, involving loud noise and high-traffic equipment. As I'm currently away on business, I am concerned this unauthorized use will disturb the neighborhood peace. If you see commercial vans or hear amplified audio this Saturday, please feel free to send a compliance officer to investigate. I hit send. Janice would not be able to resist. She would descend on Jace like a heat-seeking missile the moment the first microphone was tested. At 5:30 in the morning, the sky outside the hotel window was turning a bruised purple. It was time to secure the physical site. I checked out of the hotel and drove toward my neighborhood. I did not park in my driveway. I parked 3 blocks away, in front of a park that was empty at this hour. I pulled my hood up and walked quickly through the shadows, avoiding the pools of light from street lamps. I felt like a burglar casing my own life. My house was dark. The driveway was empty. My parents must have been staying at Jace's apartment or a nearby hotel to give the artist space before the big reveal. I circled around to the back alley, using the keypad code, which I silently thanked myself for never sharing with them. I slipped into the detached garage. The air inside was cold and smelled of gasoline and potting soil. I unlocked the back door that led to the kitchen and stepped inside. Silence. The house felt different. It felt violated, even in the dark. I could see the changes. My dining table had been pushed against the wall. There were boxes stacked in the hallway labeled Jace's merch. I did not turn on the lights. I moved by the glow of my phone screen, keeping it low. First, the router. I logged into the admin panel from my phone. I did not change the Wi-Fi password yet. Cutting their internet now would alert them that I was onto them. Instead, I set up a guest network with throttled speed and prepared a command to blacklist their devices that I could execute with a single button press on Saturday. Then, the smart locks. I updated the firmware to ensure that every entry and exit would be logged with a precise timestamp. I set a notification rule. Alert me instantly if the front door is opened. I crept into my home office. This was the only room that seemed relatively untouched, likely because Jace found books boring. I knelt before the small fireproof safe in the closet. My heart hammered against my ribs. I spun the dial, left to 20, right to 10, left to 5. The door clicked open. I riffled through the papers, passport, birth certificate, deed to the house. And there it was. It was a document I had never seen before, tucked behind my car title. General Power of Attorney. I pulled it out, shining my phone light on the text. It granted Douglas Schwartz full authority to act on my behalf in all financial and real estate matters. It was dated 3 months ago. My eyes jumped to the signature. It was a perfect replica of my autograph. If I did not know better, I would have thought I signed it. But then I looked at the notary stamp. The notary was a man named Gary Chen, from a town in Indiana. I had not been to Indiana in 2 years. I flipped the page over. There, in the tiny print of the footer, was a faint URL string. It looked like a printing artifact. Source, Gmail. Attachment, POA, draft, final, PDF. I recognized the email address in the string, darkslayer99@gmail.com. That was the email address Jace used for his Xbox Live account when he was 19. He had downloaded a template, filled it out, forged my signature, and likely paid some shady friend to notarize it. He had planted it in my safe, ready to use it if the bank asked for proof of authority. This was not just fraud. It was premeditated theft. I took a high-resolution photo of the document, ensuring the email footer was legible. I uploaded it to the cloud folder. Exhibit B, the smoking gun. I put the document back exactly where I found it. I wanted them to feel safe. I wanted them to walk into the bank thinking they held all the cards. I left the office and walked into the living room. The sunrise was just starting to bleed through the blinds, illuminating the disaster. My sofa was gone. In its place were 2 tacky gaming chairs and a long table covered in wires. A green screen blocked the view of my garden. Ring lights stood like sentinels in the corners. It looked like a spaceship had crashed into a library. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear it all down, but I forced my hands to stay at my sides. Let it stand, I told myself. The more expensive the set, the harder the fall. I reached into my bag and pulled out an old smartphone I kept for international travel. I plugged it into a portable power bank, hidden behind a row of encyclopedias on the bottom shelf of the built-in bookcase. I angled the phone so the camera lens peered out through a small gap between the wealth of nations and a history of derivatives. I connected the phone to the hidden Wi-Fi network I had just created. I opened a private streaming app and set it to broadcast to a secure server. Jace would control the main narrative on his channel. He could mute the audio or cut the feed if things went wrong. But this camera? This was my insurance policy. This was the unedited director's cut. I checked the feed on my primary phone. The angle was perfect. It captured the entire living room, the entrance to the kitchen, and the front door. I stood in the center of the room for one last second. I looked at the spot where my mother had stood yesterday, casually dismissing my entire existence. "You are right, Mom," I whispered to the empty room. "I am going to pay you back. I am going to pay you back for everything." I slipped out the back door, locking it silently behind me. I made my way back to the garage, wiped my fingerprints from the keypad, and walked the 3 blocks to my car. By the time the sun fully crested the horizon, I was sitting in a diner 5 miles away, ordering black coffee and waiting for Marla to open her office. The trap was set. The cheese was in the maze. All I had to do now was wait for the rats to get hungry. The digital clock on the dashboard of my rental car reads 11:58 in the morning. I am parked 3 houses down from my own address on Maplewood Drive, watching the circus from behind tinted windows. If I had any lingering doubts about my decision to dismantle my brother's life, the sight in front of me erases them completely. My home does not look like a residence anymore. It looks like a pop-up event for a failing energy drink company. A massive vinyl banner is zip-tied to the pillars of my front porch. In aggressive, neon yellow font, it reads, "Welcome to Jace's Creator Loft. Wealth Mindset, HQ." There are cars parked everywhere. They are jammed into my driveway, blocking the sidewalk, and 2 are parked on the grass, my grass, which I pay a landscaping service $150 a month to maintain. I see Mrs. Higgins, my 70-year-old neighbor, peeking through her lace curtains across the street. She looks terrified. I make a mental note to send her a very expensive fruit basket when this is all over. I check my appearance in the rearview mirror. I am not wearing the comfortable travel clothes of a sister coming home for a visit. I am wearing my boardroom armor, a tailored charcoal blazer, a white silk blouse buttoned to the collar, and stilettos that click like gunshots on pavement. I have applied my makeup with military precision. No soft edges. I open the car door and step out. The bass hits me first. It is a low thumping rhythm vibrating through the pavement, the kind of royalty-free trap music used in YouTube intros. It is coming from inside my house. I walk up the street. A group of teenagers with skateboards are sitting on my retaining wall, filming TikToks. They ignore me. I walk up the driveway, navigating around a bright red Jeep that I do not recognize. Then I see it. My grandmother's armchair. It is a vintage, dusty rose velvet wingback chair that belonged to my mother's mother. It was the one thing I asked for when she passed away. It usually sits in the corner of the living room, a quiet place for reading. Now, it is sitting on the front porch, exposed to the humidity. A half-empty can of neon green energy drink is balanced precariously on the velvet armrest, sweating condensation into the fabric. A guy in a hoodie is sitting in it, scrolling on his phone, his muddy sneakers resting on the porch railing. I feel a vein throb in my temple, but I do not yell. I do not kick the can over. I simply catalog the damage. Item 1. Destruction of property. Item 2. Emotional damages. I step past the boy in the hoodie and push the front door open. The smell hits me next, a cocktail of cheap body spray, hot electronics, and pizza. My living room has been effectively erased. The space is unrecognizable. Black blackout curtains have been taped over the windows, blocking out the natural light I love so much. In the center of the room, where my coffee table used to be, stands a massive semicircular desk that looks like it belongs on a spaceship. It is flanked by 3 monitors, 2 massive ring lights on tripods, and a professional-grade microphone on a boom arm. There are about a dozen people in the room. Most are young, holding cameras or phones, but in the background, moving with the frantic energy of production assistants, are my parents. I watch as my father, Douglas, crawls under the desk with a roll of gaffer tape. "We need to secure this Ethernet cable. Jace," he shouts over the music, "can't have the stream lagging when you drop the alpha strategies." My mother, Karen, is standing by the kitchen island, which is now a catering station. She is arranging a pyramid of bagels. She looks exhausted but manic, her eyes darting around the room to make sure everyone is fed. "Destiny doesn't need all this space anyway," I hear her say to a girl with purple hair who is grabbing a water bottle. "She is always working. Honestly, it is selfish for one person to have a 3-bedroom house. Jace is actually using it to build a legacy." Selfish. The word hangs in the air, suspended in the thumping bass. I step fully into the room. I let the door close behind me with a solid, heavy thud. The sound cuts through the noise just enough for my mother to look up. Karen freezes. The bagel in her hand drops to the counter. "Destiny?" she gasps. The music seems to stop, though I know it hasn't. The room just feels suddenly airless. My father scrambles out from under the desk, bumping his head. He looks at me, then at the clock, then back at me. You are in Miami," he stammers, wiping his hands on his jeans. I say. My voice is not loud, but it projects perfectly across the room. It is the voice I use to tell a CEO that his company is hemorrhaging cash. "Why didn't you call?" Karen rushes forward, wiping her hands on her apron, her face twisting into a mask of defensive aggression. "You can't just show up like this. Destiny, you scared us half to death. We thought you were coming back Tuesday." "I bet you did," I say, unmoving. I do not reach out to hug her. I stand perfectly still, my hands clasped loosely in front of me. I was also scared when I got a notification on my phone and saw a contractor measuring my load-bearing walls with a laser 2 days ago. The room goes silent. The random people with cameras lower them slightly, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure. They live for drama, and they know the smell of it. "We were going to tell you," Douglas says, his face reddening. He tries to adopt a fatherly, authoritative stance, but it is hard to look authoritative when you have duct tape stuck to your shoe. It is a surprise, a studio, for your brother. Surprise, I repeat, deadpan. Before they can dig the hole deeper, a voice booms from the center of the room. And we are leaving 3, 2, 1. What is up, future millionaires? Jace is sitting in the gaming chair, his back to me. He is wearing a black t-shirt with "Hustle Hard" printed in gold letters. He is shouting into the microphone, oblivious to my arrival. Welcome to the new HQ, Jace yells, throwing his arms out. I told you guys I was making big moves this quarter. Look at this space. This is what happens when you manifest destiny. This is what happens when you refuse to settle for a 9-to-5 life. He spins the chair around to show off the room to the camera mounted on the tripod. We got the multicam setup. We got the lounge area. The camera pans, and then it lands on me. Jace stops spinning. He stares at me. His mouth hangs open for a fraction of a second, a glitch in his carefully curated matrix. I look directly into the lens of the camera. I know that right now. Somewhere on a hidden server. My own backup camera in the bookshelf is recording this from a wide angle. Destiny? Jace squeaks. His voice cracks, losing the deep, radio host timbre he was faking a second ago. But Jace is a survivor. He is a cockroach in human clothing. I watch his brain reboot in real time. He sees the chat moving on his monitor. He sees the audience watching. He knows he cannot look like a child caught stealing cookies. He stands up, flashing a blinding veneer-white smile. Yo, chat, look who it is. He strides toward me, arms wide open. He is going to try to absorb me into the narrative. Everyone, drop a W in the chat for my sister, Destiny. He reaches me and throws his arm around my shoulder. I do not flinch. I do not lean into him. I stand as rigid as a steel beam. She is the silent partner I have been telling you about. Jace lies, talking to the camera lens, his sweat dripping onto my expensive blazer. She is the initial investor. She saw the vision before anyone else. She knows that we are building an empire here, right, sis? He squeezes my shoulder, his fingers digging in hard. It is a warning squeeze. Play along. Don't embarrass me. I can feel the heat radiating off him. He smells of fear and energy drinks. My mother is watching from the kitchen, her hands clasped in prayer, silently begging me to smile. My father is nodding encouragingly, like I am a toddler performing in a school play. She owes us her life. She won't make a fuss. She is gentle. I look at the monitor where the live stream chat is scrolling. User Crypto King. She looks rich. User Hustle. Babe, is that the house you bought? Jace? User Money Mitch. Ask her for stock tips. They think this is his house. They think I am just the wallet. I calculate the timing. Lena is scheduled to arrive at 2 o'clock. That is 45 minutes from now. I have time to marinate the steak before I grill it. I slowly reach up and remove Jace's arm from my shoulder. I do it gently, but with enough force that his hand drops to his side. I turn my head and look at him. I do not smile. My face is a blank sheet of paper waiting for a verdict. Partner, I say. My voice is calm, clear, and picked up perfectly by his expensive microphone. Yeah, you know. Jace laughs nervously, taking a half step back. Family business. We are in this together. That is an interesting way to put it, I say. I turn away from him and walk toward the camera. I step right into the center of the frame, blocking Jace out completely. I look into the lens. I treat it like I am looking into the eyes of a hostile board of directors. Hello, everyone, I say. My name is Destiny Schwartz. I am not a silent partner. I am the sole owner of the deed to this property at 4210 Maplewood Drive. Behind me, I hear my mother drop a metal tong. Clang. Jace talks a lot about assets, I continue, my voice smooth, reasonable, terrifyingly polite. He talks a lot about building wealth, and I agree. Transparency is key in finance. So, since we are all here, and since my brother has invited you into my home without my permission, I think we should do a little live audit. Destiny, stop. Jace hisses behind me. You are ruining the vibe. We can talk about this later. We are talking about it now, I say, not turning around. You wanted a platform. Jace, you wanted an audience. You have one. I reach into my leather briefcase and pull out a red folder. Today, I say to the camera, we are going to look at the difference between manifesting wealth and stealing it. We are going to look at the receipts. The room is deadly silent now. The teenagers on the skateboards outside have even stopped to look through the window. Destiny! Douglas barks, stepping forward. That is enough. You are embarrassing your brother. I turn to my father. No, Dad. I am simply calculating the ROI. Return on investment. I turn back to the camera. The chat is scrolling so fast it is a blur. The viewer count is ticking up. 1,000, 2,000. Let's start with Exhibit A, I say, opening the folder. Who wants to know who actually paid for the microphone I'm speaking into? I held the red folder in my hands. The cover was labeled in bold. Black marker. The ledger. Exhibit A. The paper felt thick and substantial, a tangible weight against the absurdity of the neon lights and the thumping bass that had finally, mercifully, been cut by a confused production assistant. You want to talk about how this empire was built? I asked, looking directly into the lens of Jace's main camera. My voice was level, the tone I used when presenting quarterly loss reports to a board of trustees. Let's look at the capitalization table. Let's explain to your investors exactly where your seed funding came from. Jace let out a sharp, forced laugh. He clapped his hands together, sweating under the ring lights. Okay. Destiny is doing a bit. Guys, she is roasting me. We love a savage sister, don't we? It is all part of the content. November 12th, 4 years ago, I read aloud, ignoring him completely. I held the first bank statement up to the lens. The focus auto-adjusted, making the numbers crisp for the thousands of viewers watching. Wire transfer, $5,000. Purpose stated, tuition for a crypto masterclass that was supposed to revolutionize our family's future. I flipped the page. The sound of the paper snapping over was loud in the sudden quiet of the room. February 4th, 3 years ago, I continued. $12,000, cashier's check, purpose stated, inventory for J-Swag clothing line, status of investment, total loss, inventory currently rotting in the basement of our parents' house in Indiana. Destiny, come on, Jace said, his smile faltering. His eyes darted to the laptop screen where the chat was scrolling faster than the human eye could read. You are killing the vibe. We can go over the books later. May 10th, last year, I read, my voice relentless. $18,000. Purpose stated, soundproofing and equipment for a music career that lasted exactly 3 weeks. I lowered the folder and looked at him. Do you want me to read the total, Jace? Or can you do the math in your head? Karen moved then. She crossed the room with a speed I hadn't seen in years. Her heels clacking on the hardwood. She grabbed my upper arm, her fingers digging into the muscle with surprising strength. Stop it, she hissed. Her voice was a low, desperate whisper, meant only for me, but I knew the sensitivity of the professional microphone hanging above our heads. It would pick up every syllable. You are humiliating your brother. You are ruining his big day. Put that away right now. I did not pull away. I simply turned my head to look at her, then looked back at the camera. I am not humiliating him. Mother, I said, projecting my voice clearly. I am just reading the bank statements. I am reading the history of my own labor. Why is the truth humiliating? Cut the feed, Douglas shouted from the corner. He was red in the face, panic overriding his usual passivity. Jace, turn the damn thing off. Jace lunged for the laptop, his elbow catching the edge of the tripod. The main camera wobbled violently, and his phone, which he had been using to monitor the chat, slipped from his sweaty grip and clattered to the floor. Oh God, Jace yelled, scrambling to pick it up. The image on the main stream tilted sideways, showing a crooked view of the ceiling and the top of my head, but it did not cut out, and even if it had, The old smartphone I had hidden in the bookshelf was capturing the entire scene in widescreen high definition, broadcasting to a backup server. The audience wasn't missing a second. I glanced at the monitor. The comments were exploding. User real talk. Is this real? Tell me this isn't scripted. User finance. Bro. She brought receipts. Literally. User drama queen. The mom is whispering. Did you hear that? User skeptical. 5,000 for a crypto class? I am dying. The viewer count jumped from 2,000 to 5,000 in the span of 30 seconds. The algorithm smelled blood. It is just a skit, Jace yelled at the camera, trying to right the tripod with shaking hands. She is playing the evil banker character. It is a metaphor for the system. I am not a metaphor. Jace, I said. I tossed the folder onto the desk. It landed with a heavy slap. And I am not a banker. A banker charges interest. I just wanted a brother. The room went quiet again. The teenage skaters outside had their faces pressed against the window glass. The random guests inside were looking at the floor, uncomfortable but unable to look away. I shifted my focus from Jace to my parents. The anger that had been fueling me shifted into something colder, sadder. I opened the folder again, but this time I didn't read numbers. Do you know what that $18,000 was, Mom? I asked. Karen stood frozen, her hand still hovering near my arm, her face pale. That was the down payment for a condo in Logan Square, I said. I had the viewing scheduled. I had the pre-approval letter, but you called me crying. You said Jace was in a dark place. You said he needed a project to save his life. You said if I didn't help, whatever happened to him would be on my conscience. I saw Douglas flinch. And the 12,000? I continued. That was my master's degree. I was accepted into the data science program at Northwestern. I deferred, twice, because Dad said the family needed to circle the wagons and support Jace's vision. We did what we had to do, Douglas muttered, though he couldn't meet my eyes. Families help each other. No, I said sharply. Families support each other. You took hostages. I walked around the desk so there was nothing between me and them. The camera in the bookshelf had a perfect view of my profile and their shrinking forms. How many times? I asked, my voice trembling slightly for the first time, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of years of silence breaking open. How many times did I have to buy my way back into this family? How many times did I have to write a check just to be allowed to sit at Thanksgiving dinner without being treated like a cold-hearted corporate robot? How much did I have to pay to get you to look at me? Karen burst into tears. It was a practiced, theatrical sob that usually worked to shut me down. We love you. Destiny. We just want everyone to be together. Why do you have to make everything about money? Because you made everything about money, I snapped. You never asked me how my day was. You never asked me about my promotion. You only asked if I could transfer funds. You monetized my love for you, and then you gave the proceeds to him. I pointed at Jace, who was standing by the window, looking like a deflated balloon. It is not wasted, Jace shouted, his voice cracking. He looked at the camera, desperate to salvage his persona. It is capital investment. I am going to pay you back double. Destiny. Once the channel blows up, once the merch line drops, you are going to get 200% back. I am doing this for us. You are 31 years old. Jace, I said, you are not an investment. You are a liability, and I am writing you off. You can't do this, Douglas said, stepping in front of Karen. We are your parents. This is your brother. You can't just air our laundry like this. I didn't turn the cameras on, Dad, I said, gesturing to the equipment surrounding us. He did. He wanted a reality show. I am just giving him a season finale. The tension in the room was so thick, it felt like the air pressure before a tornado. My parents looked at me as if I were a stranger, a monster they had accidentally created by teaching me to be too independent. Jace looked at his phone, his face gray as he watched the comments turn against him. User justice. Team sister, all the way. User scam alert. This dude is done. User family trauma. I feel this so hard. I took a deep breath. I felt lighter. The secret was out. The ledger was open. There was no going back to the way things were. I was prepared to ask them to leave. I was prepared to call the police to have them removed if necessary. But the universe wasn't done with them yet. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. It was a cheerful, generic chime that sounded bizarrely upbeat given the carnage in the living room. Jace looked at the door, confused. Did anyone order pizza? I checked my watch. It was exactly 2 o'clock. No, I said, a grim smile touching my lips. That is the rest of the evidence. I walked past my stunned parents and opened the front door. Lena stood there. She was no longer wearing the wrinkled clothes from the parking garage. She was dressed in a sharp navy suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked like an executioner. In her hands, she held a large yellow envelope that was significantly thicker than the one she had given me at the airport. She didn't look at me. She looked past me, straight at Jace. Hey, babe, Jace said, his voice trembling. Perfect timing. Destiny is being crazy. Tell them about the plan. Lena stepped into the house. The camera tracked her movement. She didn't smile. She didn't say hello. She walked straight to the desk and dropped the yellow envelope next to my red folder. We need to talk about the Range Rover. Jace, Lena said. Her voice was ice cold. And the credit cards you opened in your parents' names. The color drained from Douglas's face so fast I thought he might faint. What? Douglas whispered. I looked at the camera in the bookshelf one last time. Part 2. Everyone, I said softly. Grab your popcorn. The silence that followed Lena's entrance was heavy, the kind of silence that usually precedes a structural failure in a building. Jace looked at his fiancée with a desperate, pleading grin, assuming she was there to play her part in his scripted reality. Babe, tell them, Jace said, gesturing wildly with one hand. Tell them how we planned the launch. Tell Destiny she is overreacting. Lena did not look at him. She walked past him as if he were a piece of furniture. Specifically, a piece of furniture she was about to have hauled away to the dump. She stopped in front of me, her heels sinking slightly into the plush rug Jace had ruined with gaffer tape. It is time, Destiny, she said. Her voice was steady, but I could see the tremor in her hands as she clutched the yellow envelope. Jace blinked, confused. Time for what? The merch drop? Lena turned to the camera. She didn't have my training in media or public speaking, but she had something more potent right now, the rage of a woman who had almost been destroyed. She opened the envelope and pulled out a stapled document. This, Lena said, holding the paper up to the lens of the main camera, is a lease agreement for a Range Rover Sport. The monthly payment is $1,540. Who cares about a car? Jace scoffed, though his eyes were darting toward the back door. It is a business expense. I need a vehicle that fits the brand image. And who is the co-signer? Jace? Lena asked. She flipped the page to the signature block. She pointed a manicured finger at the bottom line. Lessee, Jace Schwartz, she read. Co-signer, Destiny Schwartz. The camera zoomed in. The chat on the monitor went wild. Even from here, I could see the comments flying by. Forgery. That looks fake. Lock him up. I stepped forward and took the document from her. I looked at the signature. It was a loopier, more flamboyant version of my own name. It was the way Jace thought a rich person signed their name. It was the handwriting of a child pretending to be an adult. I have never seen this document before in my life, I said clearly. I did not sign this. This is a felony. It is called forgery. It was a placeholder, Jace yelled, his face flushing a deep, ugly red. I was going to ask you. The dealer said I could just put it down to hold the car until you got back from Miami. It is not a big deal. Destiny. I was going to make the payments. You have missed the first 2 payments, Jace, Lena cut in. The dealer called me looking for Destiny because I was listed as a reference. That is how I found out. Karen stepped forward, looking between Jace and the contract. Jace, honey, You signed your sister's name? You know you can't do that. Her tone was mild, like she was scolding him for not using a coaster. She still didn't understand the gravity of the situation. She thought this was a family squabble, something that could be fixed with a hug and a check. Wait, Lena said. She reached back into the envelope. We are not done. She pulled out a stack of paper that was nearly an inch thick. These were not contracts. They were billing statements. Karen, Lena said, addressing my mother directly. Douglas, how many credit cards do you have? My father frowned. We have one, the joint visa we use for groceries and gas. We are very careful with debt. Then can you explain these? Lena handed the stack to my father. Douglas took them. He adjusted his glasses. As he read, his face went from confused to pale, and then to a shade of gray I had never seen before. Platinum Rewards, Travel Elite, Sapphire Reserve. Douglas read, his voice shaking. Opened 8 months ago. Balance, $12,000. Balance, $9,000. Balance, $14,000. He looked up, bewildered. I don't have these cards. Why is the billing address 1200 Riverside Drive? That is Jace's apartment, I said. The room seemed to tilt. Jace? Karen whispered. She looked at her golden boy. Jace? Why are Daddy's credit card bills going to your apartment? Jace was backing away now, retreating toward the fake fireplace he had set up as a backdrop. It is a misunderstanding. I told you guys I needed to build credit history. I added myself as an authorized user. It is standard financial leveraging. Authorized user means you get a card on their account, I corrected him, my voice slicing through his panic. Opening new lines of credit in their names without their knowledge is identity theft. Look at the transaction history. Dad, read it out loud. Douglas flipped the page. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. Best Buy, $2,000, he read. Caesar's Palace, Las Vegas, $4,000. Supreme, $800. Uber Eats, $60. Uber Eats, $80. I was investing in the lifestyle, Jace screamed. You have to spend money to make money. I was networking in Vegas. Those electronics are for the business. I was doing this for us. When the channel takes off, I was going to pay it all off in one lump sum. Douglas pulled his phone out of his pocket. He had been ignoring it because of the live stream rules Jace had imposed, but now he unlocked it. I have 17 missed notifications, my father whispered. From Credit Karma, from Experian, alerts about missed payments, delinquency notices. He looked at Jace, and for the first time in my life, I saw the veil drop from my father's eyes. He wasn't looking at his son, the misunderstood artist. He was looking at the man who had just torched his credit score and endangered his retirement. You blocked the numbers on my phone, didn't you? Douglas asked. Last month, when you fixed my settings because I said the battery was draining too fast. You blocked the fraud alerts. Jace didn't answer. He just breathed hard, his eyes wide and wet, looking for an exit. But that is just money, Lena said. Her voice was quieter now, trembling with the weight of the final revelation. Money you can earn back, but he wasn't satisfied with just the cards. She pulled the final document from the envelope. He told me he was moving into this house, Lena said to me. He said you agreed to it. He said he was going to use the equity in this property to fund a massive expansion of his media company. I didn't believe him, so I ran a title search on the county clerk's website. She held up a photocopy of a rejected application. He tried to take out a $200,000 home equity line of credit against this address. Lena said, the bank rejected it because the signature didn't match the one on file. They requested an in-person verification. I was going to represent the family, Jace stammered. I am the man of the house. I have a right to manage the assets. You have no rights to my house, I said, and you knew you couldn't get the loan with just a forged signature. You needed more power. I walked over to the bookshelf. I reached into my bag, which I had placed there when I walked in. I pulled out the photo I had taken in the safe earlier that morning, printed out on high-gloss paper. Exhibit B, I said. I held it up next to the paper Lena was holding. This is a general power of attorney document, I explained to the camera, and to my parents who stood paralyzed in the center of the room. It grants Douglas Schwartz full legal authority to sell, refinance, or encumber my property. It is signed by me, or rather, it is signed by someone trying to be me. I found this in my safe this morning, I said, hidden behind my car title. But wait, Lena said. She held up a printout of an email. I found this in Jace's sent folder. He emailed this template to himself 3 months ago, from an email address called Darkslayer99. That is Jace's old gaming email, Karen whispered. She looked like she was going to be sick. He forged my signature, I said, putting the pieces together for everyone to see. He forged a notary stamp, and he was planning to use Dad to unknowingly sign the loan papers. He was going to trick Dad into using this fake power of attorney to sign the mortgage documents, telling him it was just standard paperwork for the studio. No, Jace shouted. That is a lie. It was a broker friend. He told me to do it. He said it was a loophole. He said since we are family, it doesn't matter whose name is on the deed because it all goes to the same pot anyway. What broker? I asked. What is his name? Jace? I met him on Discord, Jace yelled. He knows everything about creative real estate. You were going to steal my house, I said. The anger was gone, replaced by a profound disgust. You were going to let Dad go to prison for fraud, just so you could have a podcast studio. Douglas looked at the power of attorney document. He looked at the credit card bills. He looked at the son he had defended for 3 decades. You were going to use me? Douglas asked, his voice breaking. You were going to make me steal your sister's house? It is our house, Jace screamed, finally losing it. He kicked the desk, sending a monitor wobbling. Why does she get everything? Why does she get the big house and the money and the career? I am the creative one. I am the one with the vision. She is just a calculator. She owes us. She owes me. The confession hung in the air, raw and ugly. It wasn't about business. It wasn't about investment. It was about envy, pure, distilled, rot-inducing envy. Karen covered her mouth with her hand, sobbing silently. She finally saw it. The golden boy wasn't gold. He was pyrite, fool's gold, and he had been scratching away at the foundation of our family until there was nothing left but debt and lies. I turned back to the camera. The red light on the backup phone in the bookshelf was still steady, unblinking. What you are seeing, I said to the thousands of people watching, is not just a family argument. This is what financial violence looks like. It starts with borrowing $20. It ends with forged deeds and identity theft. I looked at Jace, who was panting, his hair plastered to his forehead, looking small and cornered. You wanted to be a mogul. Jace, I said, but you didn't build a business. You built a Ponzi scheme, and the only investors were the people who loved you. I paused, letting the reality sink in. I am a risk analyst, I said. My job is to detect fraud, and I am very sorry to tell you, Jace, but your audit is finished. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I didn't need to dial. I had the number queued up. It is over, I said. Jace looked at the phone in my hand. Panic, real primal panic, finally set in. What are you doing? He whispered. Destiny. Don't. Please. We can fix this. I will sell the equipment. I will drive Uber. Just don't. I am not doing anything, I said. I already did it. From outside the window, the faint wail of a siren began to rise, cutting through the heavy silence of the room. It grew louder, closer, approaching reality that Jace could not gaslight away. My parents looked toward the window. They didn't move to protect him. They were too weighed down by the 12 credit cards and the fake contracts in their hands. I called them 10 minutes ago, I said, because forgery isn't a family matter. It is a crime. I reached across the chaotic mess of the desk, my hand hovering over the laptop keyboard for a fraction of a second. Jace was too paralyzed by the impending reality of the sirens to stop me. I pressed the end stream button with a firm, decisive click. The chat window froze. The view count vanished. The digital stage my brother had built for his coronation went black. But the show was not over. The hidden phone in the bookshelf was still recording, its red recording light a steady, unblinking eye in the shadows. This footage was not for the internet. It was for the district attorney. "You can't do that," Jace whispered, staring at the black screen. I had 5,000 people watching. "You have a new audience arriving now," I said. The blue and red lights from the patrol cars washed over the living room walls, turning the blackout curtains into a pulsating strobe display. The heavy thud of car doors closing echoed from the street, followed by the crunch of boots on the driveway. I walked to the front door. I did not run. I did not look back at my parents, who were huddled together near the kitchen island like survivors of a natural disaster. I opened the door before the officers could knock. 2 officers stood on the porch. One was older, with a graying mustache. The other was younger, scanning the interior of the house with sharp eyes. "We received a call regarding identity theft and an active disturbance," the older officer said, his hand resting near his belt. "I am the caller," I said, stepping aside to let them in. "My name is Destiny Schwartz. I am the homeowner." I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out a silver USB drive. I had prepared it in the hotel room just a few hours ago, anticipating this exact moment. It was labeled evidence in black marker. "Officers," I said, my voice calm and professional, the same tone I used when handing over a compliance audit to a federal regulator. "This drive contains security camera footage from the past 48 hours showing unauthorized entry and alteration of my property. It also contains digital copies of forged emails sent from inside this house." I gestured to the table where Lena had left the stack of documents. "On that table," I continued, "you will find the physical evidence, a lease agreement for a vehicle and credit card applications, all signed with my name or the names of my parents without our consent. I would like to formally file a report for forgery, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial fraud." The younger officer stepped toward the table and put on a pair of latex gloves. Jace suddenly seemed to realize that this was not a drill. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure melting under the heat of his own studio lights. No, wait!" Jace shouted, rushing forward. He stopped short when the older officer held up a hand. "This is a family matter. Tell them, Destiny, tell them it is just a prank gone wrong. We are sorting it out internally." "It is not a prank," I said. I did not look at him. I looked at the officer. "I am pressing charges." Karen let out a wail that sounded like an animal in a trap. She threw herself between Jace and the police, grabbing the sleeve of the older officer's uniform. "Please, sir, you don't understand," she cried, tears streaming down her face, ruining the makeup she had applied for the live stream. "He is a good boy. He is creative. He just got confused with the paperwork. We are a family. We don't call the police on each other." The officer gently but firmly removed her hand from his arm. He stepped back, creating a professional distance. "Ma'am," the officer said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming heavy with authority. "Forging a signature on a financial contract is not a family squabble. Opening credit lines in another person's name is not a misunderstanding. These are felonies. This is a criminal matter, not a civil one." The word felony hung in the air like smoke. It sucked the oxygen out of the room. My mother froze. The narrative she had built for 30 years, that Jace was just special and misunderstood, shattered against the hard, cold wall of the penal code. "Douglas," Karen turned to my father, desperate. "Do something. Tell them we gave him permission." Douglas looked at the credit card statement still clutched in his hand. He looked at the charges for the Vegas trip, the electronics, the clothes. He looked at the son who had blocked the fraud alerts on his phone. Douglas started, his voice cracking. "I didn't know. I didn't sign these." "Dad," Jace screamed, "don't let them take me." "I can't lie to the police." "Karen," Douglas whispered, sinking onto a stool. He spent $12,000. He ruined my credit. He is your son, Karen shrieked. And he stole from me, Douglas said. The realization seemed to break him physically. His shoulders slumped, and he looked 10 years older than he had 10 minutes ago. The younger officer had finished reviewing the documents Lena had provided. He looked up and nodded to his partner. Mr. Jace Schwartz, the older officer said, reaching for his handcuffs. I am going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back. As the officer moved, another car pulled into the driveway. It was a sleek, black sedan. Marla King stepped out. She walked up the path with the confidence of a woman who eats jagged glass for breakfast. She was carrying a leather portfolio. She stepped into the house, assessed the situation in 1 second, and walked straight to me. Officers, Marla said, nodding to them. She handed a document to the older officer. I am Marla King, representing Ms. Destiny Schwartz. This is a formal trespass notice for Mr. Jace Schwartz, effective immediately. We are also requesting that he be removed from the premises permanently. She turned to my parents. She pulled 2 more papers from her portfolio. Mr. and Mrs. Schwartz, Marla said, her voice crisp. This is a notice of revocation of access. You are no longer authorized to enter this property without the express written invitation of the owner. If you remain here after the police depart, you will also be considered in violation of criminal trespass laws. Douglas stood up, his face flushing purple. The shock was wearing off, replaced by the defensive anger of a patriarch losing control. You are kicking us out? Douglas spat, turning on me. We are your parents. Destiny. We raised you. You are going to throw us out on the street while your brother is being arrested? I am not throwing you on the street, I said. You have a home. It is in Indiana. I suggest you go there and check your mail for more collection notices. You are heartless, Douglas snarled. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You are cold. You are destroying this family over money. You are sending your own brother to prison just to prove a point. I did not sign his name on that lease, Dad, I said. My voice was low, but it cut through the noise of the handcuffs clicking around Jace's wrists. I did not open those credit cards. I did not forge a power of attorney to steal this house. Jace did that. He signed his own confession. I am just the one who stopped paying the bill to cover it up. You are a traitor, Karen sobbed, looking at me with pure hatred. I wish I had never... She stopped herself, but the unfinished sentence hung there. I wish I had never had you. Or perhaps, I wish I had never relied on you. It didn't matter. The sentiment was clear. You have 5 minutes to collect your personal belongings, Marla interjected, stepping between me and my mother. Officer, can you please escort Mr. Jace Schwartz to the vehicle? Let's go, the officer said, guiding Jace toward the door. Jace stumbled forward. He looked frantic. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning for the camera, for the chat, for the audience that could validate him. Destiny, he yelled, as he was dragged past me. Destiny, tell them to stop. I will pay you back. I have a deal pending. The channel is going to monetize next month. He twisted his head, trying to look into the lens of the tripod camera, unaware it was dead. Like and subscribe, he shouted, a reflex of a mind completely broken by delusion. It is all content. It is just a prank. And then he was gone. The door did not close behind him. It remained open, framing the scene of him being pushed into the back of the patrol car. His head was ducked down, not by humility, but by the officer's hand protecting him from hitting the roof frame. My parents scrambled to gather their coats. They grabbed the bag of bagels. They grabbed their phones. They did not look at me again. The shame was too great, or perhaps the anger was too fresh. They walked out of the house, keeping their distance from the police car, as if the contagion of criminality might jump from Jace to them if they got too close. We will be in touch regarding the civil suit for damages, Marla called out after them as they hurried toward their own car. The second officer tipped his hat to me. We will need you down at the station tomorrow to sign the formal statement, Ms. Schwartz. I will be there at 8, I said. The officer left, Marla stood by the door, watching them go. She turned to me, her expression softening just a fraction. "You did good. Destiny," she said. "The restraining orders will be filed by morning. They won't be able to come within 500 feet of this house or your workplace." "Thank you, Marla," I said. "Send the bill to my personal account. Do not offer a discount." "I wouldn't dream of it," she said with a small smile. "Try to get some sleep. The locks?" "Changed and logged," I said. "Smart girl." Marla walked out, closing the door behind her. The click of the latch was the loudest sound I had heard all day. I was alone. The living room was a wreck. The black curtains still blocked the sun. The stupid gaming chair sat empty in the center of the room. The wires snaked across the floor like dead vines. I stood there for a long time. I expected to feel sad. I expected to feel the crushing weight of guilt that had controlled me for 30 years. I waited for the tears to come, for the urge to run after the police car and beg them to let Jace go. But nothing came. Instead, I felt a strange, quiet sensation in my chest. It was the feeling I got when I finally closed a project that had been over budget and behind schedule for years. It was the feeling of stopping a data leak. I walked over to the bookshelf. I reached behind the encyclopedias and retrieved the old phone. I stopped the recording. I looked at the screen. The battery was at 12%. I walked to the window and tore down the black tape holding the blackout curtain. I ripped the fabric down, letting it fall in a heap on the floor. The afternoon sun flooded into the room. It illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air. It was bright. It was clean. I wasn't a sister anymore. I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't a bank. I was just destiny. And for the first time in my life, the ledger was balanced. The red and blue lights of the patrol car finally dissolved into the darkness of the street, taking the wail of the siren, and my brother, with them. The silence that rushed back into the house was heavier than the noise had been. It was a suffocating, vacuum-sealed silence. Marla had given my parents 5 minutes to collect their belongings and vacate the premises, but 5 minutes had passed, and they were still there. Karen and Douglas were sitting on the edge of the gaming chairs Jace had bought with their stolen credit, looking around the living room as if they had never seen it before. The adrenaline of the arrest had faded, leaving behind the gray, ash-like reality of the situation. They looked small. They looked old. And then, the shock turned into the inevitable search for a scapegoat. Douglas looked up at me. He was holding his head in his hands, his fingers digging into his thinning hair. "We are going to lose the house in Indiana," he said. His voice was hoarse. "Do you realize that? Those cards, the ones Jace opened, the balances are over $30,000. The interest rates alone will eat my pension check before I even see it." I stood by the kitchen island, leaning against the cold granite. "That sounds like a conversation you need to have with the fraud department, Dad." "If you hadn't called the police," Douglas snapped, his voice rising with a sudden, desperate energy, "we could have negotiated. We could have worked out a payment plan with Jace. He has deals coming up. He told us he was close to a breakthrough. We could have moved the debt around. But now he's in the system. You took away our only leverage." I stared at him. The delusion was so deep it was almost geological. "You think the leverage was keeping it a secret?" I asked quietly. "Dad, the leverage was my house. The plan was to steal my equity to pay off his bad bets. There was no negotiation. There was just theft." "He is your brother!" Karen cried out. She stood up, clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. She played the card she always played when logic failed, the biological debt. "I carried you for 9 months. Destiny. I sat by your bed when you had pneumonia in the 3rd grade. I sacrificed my career to raise you children. And this is how you repay us? By destroying the family over money?" "You are ungrateful," she spat, the tears flowing freely now. "You are cold and ungrateful. You have so much, and you refuse to throw a lifeline to the people who made you." I listened to every word. Years ago, these words would have cut me open. They would have made me scramble for my checkbook, desperate to prove that I was good, that I was loving, that I was worthy of them. But today, the words just bounced off. I felt like I was watching actors recite lines from a script I had already read 100 times. I didn't scream back. I didn't cry. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I had typed it up in the hotel room at 4 in the morning, right after I finished the spreadsheet. I walked over and placed it on the desk in front of them, right next to the empty space where Jace's microphone had been. "This is not a debate," I said. "This is a notice." Douglas squinted at the paper. "What is this?" "It is a formal declaration," I said, my voice steady. "Effective immediately. I am ceasing all financial assistance to the Schwartz family. I will not co-sign loans. I will not cover emergency bills. I will not pay for bail. I will not pay for lawyers." "You can't do that," Karen whispered. "I can," I said, "and I have." I crossed my arms. "I ran the numbers last night. Mom, in the last 6 years, I have transferred exactly $137,000 to you and Jace. That is not helping. That is funding a deficit. I poured nearly $140,000 into a project that has returned nothing but toxicity and fraud." I looked my father in the eye. If I were analyzing this for a client at Novagate, I would have advised them to liquidate the asset 5 years ago. Any sane investor would have pulled out. I am cutting my losses. Karen looked at me with horror, as if I had just spoken in a foreign language. "Family is not a company. Destiny. You can't talk about us like we are a stock portfolio. You can't just talk about investing when it comes to blood." "You are right," I said. "Family isn't a business." I leaned forward, placing my hands flat on the desk. "But you are the ones who turned me into a bank. You are the ones who treated me like an insurance policy against Jace's failures. You monetized me. All I am doing is closing the branch." Douglas stood up. His face was red. His fists clenched at his sides. He saw that guilt wasn't working, so he reached for his last weapon: shame. "If you do this," he said, his voice shaking with menace, "if you let your brother rot in jail and leave us with this debt, I will tell everyone. I will tell the pastor. I will tell your Aunt Margaret. I will tell every cousin in Indiana that you abandoned your parents in their hour of need. You will be a pariah. Destiny. No one will want to look at you." I felt a ghost of a smile touch my lips. It was a sad smile, but it was real. "Go ahead," I said. "Tell them whatever story makes you sleep better at night. Paint me as the villain. Call me the Ice Queen. I don't care." I pointed to the USB drive I had given the police. "Because the legal record will tell the truth," I said. "And honestly, Dad, if the price of being in this family is letting you rob me blind, then I am happy to be an orphan." I picked up another document from the desk, the copy of the trespass notice Marla had served them. "Your 5 minutes are up," I said. "This is a trespass warning. It means that if you come back to this house without an invitation, the police will return, and next time, they won't just be taking Jace." Douglas looked at the paper, then at me. He looked for a crack in the armor, a sign that the old Destiny, the one who fawned, the one who fixed things, was still in there. He found no one. "Come on, Karen," he muttered, grabbing her arm. "She is gone. The daughter we knew is gone." "She was never there," I said softly to their backs. "You just saw an ATM." Karen sobbed one last time, a ragged sound of defeat, and allowed Douglas to pull her toward the door. They walked past the destroyed living room set, past the blacked-out windows, past the life they had tried to steal. They stepped out onto the porch. The cool afternoon air rushed in. For a second, just a split second, Karen paused on the threshold. She looked back. I knew that look. It was the look that used to make me crumble. It was the look that said, "Fix this, and I will love you again." I stood my ground. I did not move. I did not speak. She turned away and walked down the steps. I watched them get into their car, the sensible sedan that was probably maxed out on a credit line I didn't know about. I watched them back out of the driveway, avoiding the tire marks the police cruiser had left. When the car disappeared around the corner, I didn't collapse. I didn't cry. I walked to the front door. I placed my hand on the heavy wood. I pushed it shut. Click. The electronic lock engaged automatically, the deadbolt sliding into place with a mechanical precision that sounded like music. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. For years, I had thought that locking the door meant keeping the world out. I realized now that I had it wrong. I wasn't locking them out. I was locking myself in. I was locking myself in with my own life, my own money, and my own peace. The silence in the house wasn't empty anymore. It was full. It was mine. I turned around and looked at the mess in the living room. It would take weeks to clean up. I would have to hire painters. I would have to replace the carpet. It would cost money. But for the first time in my life, I didn't mind the expense, because this time, I wasn't paying for their mistakes. I was paying for my freedom. 3 months have passed since the sirens faded from Maplewood Drive. The silence in my house is no longer the heavy, suffocating quiet of a crime scene. It is a living, breathing stillness. I am standing in what used to be the living room, the same space where Jace had set up his neon circus and where my mother had wept over lost credit cards. The gaming chairs are gone. The blacked-out windows have been stripped bare, allowing the afternoon sun to pour in across the refinished hardwood floors. I did not just clean the room, I reclaimed it. In the corner where Jace had his monitors, I have built a tiered indoor garden. Vines of pothos cascade down from the ceiling, and pots of basil, rosemary, and mint line the shelves. The air does not smell like stale energy drinks or desperation anymore. It smells of damp earth and crushed leaves. It smells like growth. I pour hot water over fresh mint leaves in a ceramic teapot. I am not alone today. Sitting on my newly reupholstered sofa, the one my mother said was too boring for a studio, are the only 2 family members I have chosen to keep. Aunt Margaret takes a cup from me with a nod of thanks. Margaret is my father's younger sister, for as long as I can remember. The family narrative was that Margaret was eccentric and difficult because she moved 2 states away and rarely came home for Christmas. I realize now that Margaret wasn't difficult. She was just the first one of us to figure out the game. She cut Douglas off 20 years ago when he tried to guilt her into co-signing a business loan for one of his earlier failed ventures. Next to her sits Lena. She looks different than she did that night in the garage. Her hair is cut into a sharp bob, and she is wearing a bright yellow sweater. She looks younger, lighter, as if she has put down a heavy backpack she had been carrying for a decade. "So," Margaret says, blowing on her tea, "I heard from Cousin Betty in Indiana." I sit down in the armchair, my grandmother's chair, which I rescued from the porch and had professionally cleaned. "And? What is the news from the front lines?" Margaret takes a sip. "Your parents sold the house on Elm Street. The bank was threatening foreclosure because of the liens Jace put on it, so they did a short sale. They lost almost all their equity paying off the immediate debts to stay out of court." I nod. I feel a twinge in my chest, a phantom pain. But it is dull. It is the ache of an old scar, not a fresh wound. "Where are they living?" I ask. "A 2-bedroom rental in a strip mall complex outside of Gary," Margaret says. "It is small. Douglas had to go back to work part-time at a hardware store to cover the rent." She looks at me over the rim of her cup. "They are telling everyone who will listen that you destroyed them. They told the church group that you are a vindictive, heartless corporate shark who sent her own brother to jail because he borrowed a car." "He is not in jail," Lena corrects gently. "He is out on bail, awaiting trial. But the plea deal his public defender is working on includes probation and restitution. He will be paying me back $50 a month for the next 40 years. "They can tell whatever story they want," I say, running my finger along the rim of my teacup. I cannot control the narrative in their heads. I can only control the locks on my doors. "You know," Margaret says, leaning forward, "for years, they told me I was the black sheep because I wouldn't fund their lifestyle. Now they say you are the ice queen, I think, in this family. If you have a spine, they call you a monster." "I am okay with being the ice queen," I say. "Ice preserves things. It stops the rot." I look at Lena. "How are the legal fees?" I told Marla to bill everything to the new account. "We are good," Lena smiles. The fraud reports went through. Because we filed the police report that night, the credit card companies removed the debt from my name. My score went up 50 points yesterday. I actually got approved for my own apartment. No roommates, no Jace. That is the best return on investment I have heard all year, I say. We were talking, Lena says, glancing at Margaret, about starting something, a blog, maybe, or a support group, financial boundaries for families. There are so many people like us, destiny, people who think love means letting someone drain your bank account. I would read that, I say. There is something else, I say, setting my cup down. Something I didn't tell you guys, or them. Margaret raises an eyebrow. Another secret weapon? More like a final firewall, I say. I tell them about the meeting I had with my wealth manager 3 days before I flew to Miami, before I even saw the camera footage. I had a bad feeling. Jace had been asking too many questions about my stock options at Novagate. I established an irrevocable trust, I explain. It is called a spendthrift trust. I moved the bulk of my liquid savings and my unvested stock options into it. I appointed an independent trustee. Margaret whistles low. Smart. It means that even if they sued me, I say, even if they tried to use some obscure filial responsibility law to force me to pay for their housing or their debts, they cannot touch the money. Technically, I don't own it. The trust does. And the trust has strict bylaws that forbid distributions to anyone with a criminal record for fraud. I smile. It is a small, private smile. So even if I wanted to cave, even if I had a moment of weakness and wanted to write them a check to make the guilt go away, I can't. I literally cannot give them the money. I tied my own hands to save myself. Lena looks at me with wide eyes. You built a trap for Jace, but you built a fortress for yourself. I had to, I say. I know myself. I know that the fawn response is hard to break. I needed to make sure that the door wasn't just locked, but bricked over. We sit in silence for a while, watching the dust motes dance in the shaft of sunlight. It is a peaceful silence. It is the silence of 3 women who have survived the storm and are now drying their clothes by the fire. After they leave, I walk out to the backyard. The garden is neglected. I haven't had time to tend to it during the chaos of the investigation and the restraining order hearings. There is a rose bush near the fence that has been overtaken by a parasitic vine. One of the main branches is brown and brittle, dead wood that is sucking energy from the roots, but producing no flowers. I put on my gardening gloves. I pick up the heavy shears. I don't hesitate. I position the blades at the base of the dead branch, right where it joins the healthy trunk. Snip. The sound is sharp and final. The dead wood falls to the grass. I look at the cut. The inner wood is white and clean. Now that the dead weight is gone, the rest of the bush will get more sap, more light, more life. I pick up the dead branch and walk over to the compost bin. I toss it in. It will decompose. It will become dirt. And eventually, it might even help something else grow. But it will never be part of my rosebush again. I stand there, breathing in the cool evening air. I think about Jace, waiting for his trial, probably still telling himself he is one lucky break away from being a billionaire. I think about my parents in their small apartment, nursing their grievances like precious jewels. I used to think that love meant holding on. I thought that loyalty meant gripping the rope until your hands bled. I look at my hands. They are scarred. Yes, but they are healing. And for the first time, they are empty. They are not holding anyone up. They are free to build whatever I want. I turn back to the house. The windows are glowing with warm, golden light. It looks like a home. My home. I walked into a trap that day when I opened my phone app, but I didn't get caught. I dismantled the mechanism. I used the parts to build a ladder, and I climbed out. And looking back, I realized the most important thing wasn't the money I saved or the house I protected. It was the woman who walked out the front door and refused to look back. She is the one I saved. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it was intense, but I hope it reminds you that you are allowed to say no, even to the people you share DNA with. I am really curious to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening while gardening, driving to work, or maybe taking a break in a coffee shop halfway across the world? Please let me know in the comments below. I would love to connect with you. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about justice and reclaiming your life, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this video reach more people who might need to hear it. Stay strong, and remember, protect your peace.